When we prompt an AI system to make something, who gets the copyright? Can the computer get copyright? Should a human get copyright? What if the prompt is really short? My name's Chris Erickson, and I'm a professor in law in Create at the University of Glasgow. And I teach on the LLM in technology, law, and regulation. What I'm going to talk about today is the relationship between artificial intelligence and copyright law, which is an issue of really big concern for industry, creative people, society at large. And it's really core to the type of research and teaching that we do in Create at the School of Law. So why is this an issue? Well, as we know, generative AI has come on the scene since ChatGPT in 2022. And since then, there's just been an explosion of interest and growth in generative AI, whether it's producing text, images, and now even video and interactive worlds. But copyright owners and creative people are concerned that their works might be included in the data sets which are used to train those AI models. And so they have concerns related to copyright and how their works are being used by AI companies. As well, we have people who are enthusiastically adopting AI to produce new works. We prompt ChatGPT to write poetry. We create pictures with ease on Midjourney and other generative AI platforms, even using Sora to make video. So another interesting question is, what's the copyright status of those works, those outputs, if you like, of AI? Who owns the copyright in those? So these are two interconnected questions which we're going to talk about today to give you a kind of an introduction to the courses at the University of Glasgow. So first, let's think about the inputs. So inputs means all of the materials which were pulled into the model in order to train it to be able to generate new information. As we know, these models are trained on billions and billions of works. In copyright law, we say works. We mean bits of text or pictures or video. So the question is, are those works protected by copyright? In many cases, they are. If we go out on the internet and we extract millions of texts, some of those will be protected by copyright. So are the rights of the owners of those works infringed when an artificial intelligence model looks at those works in order to get smarter, to be trained? So that's the first question. Let's look at a court case as an illustrative example. Getty Images, which operates one of the largest stock image libraries on Earth, has sued Stability AI, an AI company, in the United Kingdom and the United States, alleging infringement of Getty's stock image library. Getty's stock image library consists of millions and millions of pictures. And they say that those pictures, some of them are actually inside of the training data of Stability AI, and that the AI system, by drawing on those images to create new images, produces a copyright infringement. So let's use this example of a football match. Here are two pictures. One side shows a white-clothed player and a red-clothed player fighting over a ball. The same thing on the other side. These pictures are somewhat similar. Now, in the Stability AI case, it's argued that Stability AI's output basically infringes the image on the left. But at first glance, they're not exactly identical. The image on the left, of course, shows the similar scene. It has a player with a red jersey and a player with a white jersey. But the players are a bit different. Their feet are in slightly different positions. And one might imagine that in the course of a football match, a photographer of skill could take a very similar picture of two players sort of jostling over a ball. So because the images aren't identical, we might say, well, there's not likelihood of infringement here. But let's look closer. On the image on the right, if you look down very, very closely on the player's knee, you'll see the unmistakable Getty Images watermark. It's sort of warbly, it's not exactly the watermark, but you can see that it is essentially reproducing the watermark. For the plaintiffs in this case, this is proof that Stability AI system has basically memorized the pictures in the stock image library so much that it reproduces the watermark in outputs of similar images of soccer matches. So they claim that, yes, there's infringement taking place because our picture is inside of the data, and we can prove it because the watermark is reproduced in the outputs. But that's an interesting question, isn't it? Should copyright owners be able to assert their rights over these kinds of potential infringements? Or does the benefit of having super smart generative AI that can produce unlimited amounts of images perhaps outweigh the concerns of any one single rights holder? since, as we see, the output isn't exactly reproducing the image, but it can't be debated that the image was seen at a certain point by Stability AI's system. So that's one kind of infringement, is has the system seen the picture in the wild and then used that to produce these outputs. When the outputs become more identical, we call that memorization. That's a bigger problem for the AI companies, because if I was able to produce the exact same picture of the two soccer players, then it's clearly more likely to be an infringement. So in cases where that's happened, disputes have leaned more in favor of the copyright owner. Okay, so we've looked at potential copyright infringement when it comes to inputs used to train these generative AI systems. But what about outputs? If we're the one prompting the system, should we get copyright protection in what comes out? That's also really interesting, because one issue is that we don't have total control, at least yet, over the exact output, right? All we can do is write a prompt, and then the system gives us an approximation of what it thinks we expect to see. So does that lack of control by the human author prevent copyright? Well, what's interesting is there's really different points of view depending on the jurisdiction you're in. In Europe, there's a fairly low threshold of originality for getting copyright in a work. Basically, as long as the prompter or the user of the AI system is able to make free and creative choices and express their creativity in the generation of the image, chances are that they would be eligible for copyright in the output. But in the United States, the situation's different. The US Copyright Office issued guidance very recently to the effect that copyright does not attract to images which are produced through these generative AI image software systems like Midjourney or Stability. Well, why is that? Well, the US Copyright Office argues that there just isn't enough scope for human creativity to be expressed when you write a simple prompt and then the computer does the heavy lifting to create this intricate image. That too much of the expression, the actual construction of the image, happens in the computer and not through the hand of the human author. So what does that mean? Well, there's benefits and drawbacks to both. We can imagine a situation where an artist working with new technology works really hard to generate extremely intricate prompts that finally guide the computer to making an output that they're really proud of, that they feel expresses their creativity. Perhaps they should get copyright in the work. But there's also the concern that generative AI, because it's automatic, can produce volumes of work, billions and billions of images. And if we started giving everybody rights in the images that they produce with very little effort, then we might have a problem of too much copyright in the world, too many protected works. So maybe those works ought to be in the public domain where anybody can make use of them. So this isn't a really straightforward situation, and it really depends kind of on one's understanding of what the purpose of copyright is and what the benefits and drawbacks of these new technologies are going to be. But for sure, we know that it's going to be controversial. If you want to explore these topics in more detail, if you want to learn more about where the law and the technology intersect, come study with us. We can't wait to take the conversation further.